The Vols last season finished 7-6. And this was a program that I am really excited to watch this year. You have Hendon Hooker coming back at quarterback. You guys already know how I feel about Hendon Hooker this season. Either he wins Heisman or nobody else does. He's one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. Last year for Tennessee, he threw for 2,945 passing yards, 31 touchdowns to 3 interceptions while completing 68.2% of his passes. He also ran for 620 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. He is a big reason why I am so high on the Volunteers going into this upcoming college football season. You also have leading rusher Jabari Small returning. He could quietly become one of the better backs in America. Last year, he had 140 carries for 792 rushing yards, averaged 5.7 yards per attempt, and had 9 touchdowns. You also return your leading wide receiver, Cedric Tillman, who had 64 receptions for 1,081 receiving yards, 12 touchdowns, and he averaged 16.9 yards per reception. And Cedric Tillman has the potential to become the best wide receiver in the conference because there are definitely a lot of talented wide receivers, but when you look at Cedric Tillman, the fact that he returns, he could have left for the NFL, he has really good size, plus him and Hendon Hooker already have a really good connection. This is probably going to be one of the best quarterback wide receiver tandems that we have in all of college football this year. Then you have USC transfer Brew McCoy, who was a former 5-star coming out of high school, great size, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Drake London in a sense. They have similar body builds and structure. And on top of that, he is a better athlete than what Drake London was. He can really run. And in Josh Heupel's offense, I believe that he can do some really big things. He could end up having a breakout season. Then you have slot receivers, Jalen, who caught 21 passes for 226 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Jimmy Callaway also is going to be in the mix. He's really explosive with the ball in his hands. You return both of your tight ends in Princeton Fent and Jacob Warren. Your defense is probably going to be the big question mark that everybody's going to have about Tennessee. This was one of the worst defenses in college football last year. You allowed 31.5 points per game, 97th worst in the country. You were 105th in yards per game allowed. But honestly, with the style of offense that Tennessee runs being fast-paced, this defense isn't going to play at a high level. At best, this defense probably would finish top 60. So realistically, I'm not expecting the defense to be a world beater. I'm not expecting Tennessee to have a top 10 defense, and they don't need a top 10 defense to be able to compete. Who needs a defense when you can just outscore everybody? But I am looking for the Vols defense to be really good situationally, because no matter what, you're not going to win too many football games regardless how good your offense is if you have one of the worst defenses in all of college football when it comes to getting off the field in third down situations. On top of that, this was a defense that not only wasn't good on third down, but they were awful in the red zone. They allowed opposing teams to score touchdowns in the red zone 92% of the time. That's unacceptable. You know what that put them at? 121st in the country. And I don't even know what's even more worse. The fact that they couldn't get off the field in third down situations, or the fact that they couldn't stop anybody in the red zone. But what's even worse is the fact that they didn't create a lot of turnovers. They were 104th in takeaways. So this defense has to play way better. And like I mentioned earlier, this isn't a defense that is going to be one of the best simply for the way the offense is ran. The offense is high paced. This offense is trying to score fast. They move the ball fast. So the defense is going to be on the field for a good amount of plays. However, there are certain aspects where this defense has to improve. And if you're going to be able to win in the SEC, you're going to have to be able to do more than just offense. You're going to have to be able to come away with some key takeaways and big moments. You're going to have to be able to get some big sacks in third down situations. You do have edge rusher Byron Young returning, 5.5 sacks. If he can get to 9 sacks, I think that would be really good. You also have linebacker Jeremy Banks, who led the team in tackles last season. He had 128. 11.5 tackles for loss. He also had 5.5 sacks, 4 pass deflections, and an interception. I believe he could end up emerging as one of the best linebackers in this conference. A couple of other players on the Vols defense that I'm really excited to see. You have Brendan Turnage, who's going to be playing that star position, or he's expected to be getting the start at that star position. He won SEC Defensive Player of the Week against South Carolina when he had to fill in replace of the injured starter at that time, Phil Jackson. He had 14 total tackles in that game, 2 tackles for loss. He's a former Alabama Crimson Tide transfer. At the time when he first transferred to Tennessee, Josh Heupel was really excited about him. It was a big get for him. He raved about him, and he's going to end up having a big role, I feel, in this Vols defense. You also have free safety Trayvon Flowers, who is a senior. He is pretty much the Tennessee Vols' best defensive back. 82 tackles, 3 pass deflections, and an interception last year. You also have Jalen McCullough, who led the team in interceptions with 3. He had 5 pass deflections, 49 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. So this is a secondary that the safety position I feel really confident in. I don't really know how good the cornerback play is going to be because the cornerback play is to be decided. Yeah, you have a couple of players who you got in the transfer portal. You have a couple of returning vets that are coming back. However, you don't really know the kind of performance that you're going to get out of the cornerback position this year, which is why I say I'm going to take more of a wait and see approach. However, this is a team that overall should be able to compete for the second best team in the SEC East. We know how good Georgia is going to be this year. Georgia, even though they did lose a lot of talent, they are replacing that talent with great talent. You get what I'm saying? I know that wasn't the best wording, but teams like Alabama and Georgia, they don't rebuild, they just reload. They have great players leave and have great players come in and fill those roles. So for Georgia, I still expect them to be the best team in the SEC East. However, I definitely feel that the Tennessee Volunteers can be competing for that second spot in the East along with Kentucky and maybe Florida. Some people may be sleeping on the Florida Gators, but the Florida Gators could surprise many people this year. However, I'm really high on Tennessee. When you have a star quarterback like a Hendon Hooker, if Hendon Hooker plays at a Heisman caliber level, that means Tennessee is going to have at least 9 wins. And maybe more. Maybe we could see Tennessee get to a New Year's Six bowl game. However, another thing that I'm really excited to see, I want to see how Hendon Hooker performs against Georgia this year. Because Georgia was pretty much his worst performance, and he didn't even play bad in that game. It's simply the fact that Tennessee just got rostered to death. And even if they do get rostered to death by Georgia, I think that Tennessee is capable of being able to put Georgia in a close game going into the fourth quarter, and then Georgia maybe is able to pull away. I just want to see Tennessee fight. I want to see Tennessee fight against Georgia. I want to see this team fight against some of the best teams in the SEC. And I think that Tennessee is going to be able to pull off some upsets. I expect this team to get to 9 wins this year. I don't know if 9 wins is going to be good enough to get to a New Year's Six bowl game or whatnot, but this is a football program that I'm really high on. I'm really excited to watch, and I think that they are heading in the right direction. However, I think that this is going to be a pretty big year for Josh Heupel. And not in the sense that he's going to get fired or anything, but I'm just saying that this would be big if he's able to get to 9, maybe 10 wins. It would be a huge momentum boost for the Tennessee program. And I believe that it can happen because when you have a star quarterback like Hendon Hooker, he's able to elevate not only the players around him, but he kind of boosts the morale of the whole entire program. There are many people who are now starting to hop aboard of the Hendon Hooker Heisman hype train, and welcome aboard. But you guys let me know how you're feeling about the Vols this year. Could Tennessee potentially end up making the New Year's Six bowl game? I definitely feel it's possible, but you let me know down in the comment section down below how you're feeling about Tennessee football this upcoming college football season.